Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Sharon Let's Live with Marlene Dillon, Empowerment Specialist. Okay, so today I want to talk about imagination. I'm turning on my rain sounds because my daughter is on the phone very close to me, and I don't want that to be part of the recording. Okay, so yesterday I was driving and recording hands-free. And I was stressing out and panicking because, well, I don't know if you could tell that while I was recording, but at some point I did have to pull over because I was just like freaking out because my car, there was something disconnected in the exhaust system, and I was afraid my muffler or some other part was going to fall off at any moment. However, that experience caused me to recognize that I was living, or I am and have been living, way beneath what I deserve and what makes sense, given who I am, how I show up in the world. Like, I believe that good-hearted people should have wealth too, and honestly, I feel like they should have it more so than those who are not kind-hearted, because good-hearted people make good decisions with money, and people who are not good-hearted make other decisions with money. So I had this moment of just like, oh dear God, like, I do not want to, die in this car. And it always feels like death to me when something's about to like malfunction on the car. Like, it freaks me out because I don't know when it's going to happen, and I'll be driving and it's just like, what do I do or whatever. And so I was super stressed out, but it brought me to the conclusion that I need to shift what I believe in regard to what I believe is possible for me, like that I get to have these things, not just that I want them, but also that I get to have them. And it felt like a major shift for me, or a pivot, that I now see things differently, that I now, for the first time in my life, I actually recognize that I don't deserve to have the experience I'm having. And I began to see myself with a little more compassion. And I really started to look at all the factors that are involved in me being where I am now, like where I am financially, where I am in my career, where I am in life with like what I have, what I'm able to do, etc. And allowed myself to see that there are so many different factors involved, many of which I wasn't even aware were involved until last year when I was diagnosed with ADHD and some other things. So, So anyway, so I was having this conversation with my therapist about these discoveries, and I said something, and she immediately was like, say it again. And so she wrote it down. And what I said was, as long as I believe what these people believe about me and continue to say that stuff to myself, I can't have what I want to have because I don't feel like I deserve it. And that is so freaking powerful, because the realization that I had yesterday is that whether I intended to or not, whether I've been aware of it or not, I have aligned with the beliefs of the people who have told me that I'm not doing enough, who have told me that I can't have it if I don't do it this way, like whatever their way is. I've aligned myself with those beliefs. And because of that, as well as all the reasons why I don't deserve to have it, all the reasons why what I want is above me, is like better than me, is, unattainable for me. And I realized that as long as I continue to, because it's one thing for people to believe that. It's another thing when I also believe it. When I've taken their words and now have made them my own thoughts. And because of that, that's the filter through which I see my life and my possibilities. So even though I know that you can have there are infinite ways to make money. For example, there are people who are influencers on social media. There are people who are who came into money because of a sex tape. There are people who are singing on train platforms. There are people who a rich relative that they didn't even know died and left them money. There are people who just happened to be kind to someone who was super rich and they didn't even know, and that person gave them, whatever it is that they needed. Like, there are infinite ways for money to come in. But what people say is that the only way for you to make money is for you to work really, really hard, work a lot of hours, help a bazillion people, and save it all. Whatever the different versions are of, these are the main ways that you're allowed to have money. And pretty much it's said in a way that makes it as if that's the only way for you to have the things that you want. But I know of so many different examples of people having what they want in other ways. I've personally seen myself experience money coming in ways that I couldn't have imagined. And well, actually I did imagine and eventually they did come through that way, but I've even seen it come in through ways that I didn't foresee. Like, I might have said it would be great if I could get a scholarship to pay this tuition, but I didn't see the option. And then because I dreamed that dream, the option made itself available. At one point I was watching The Secret, and I was dealing with various health issues. I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I was having back pain. I was trying to see what was going on with my back. And a chiropractor, actually a classmate, last person on earth that I would have expected to support me in any way, went to her friend's husband, was a chiropractor. She paid for $500 worth of services in advance, then told me and just told me, go make an appointment, go see the chiropractor. So that's one way where money came in unexpectedly, had nothing to do with anything. Like, I never asked her. I didn't know her friend's husband was a chiropractor or anything like that. She just felt moved to help me. And while I was at the chiropractor, he mentioned that the only way to know for sure what's going on with my back is for me to get an MRI. And at the time, I didn't have insurance. So I was like, and when he told me how much an MRI costs, I was like, I guess I won't be getting an MRI. But he explained to me that if I went in through the emergency room, that they would order an MRI to see what's going on with my back. And what's causing me this pain. So after experiencing this excruciating pain that I just can't even describe right now, one day I called for an ambulance, and I told them that I was in excruciating pain, and they took me to the ER, and I got the MRI, and after that, I realized the reason why people prefer to drive themselves to the hospital rather than take an ambulance, because it's expensive as hell. And that was many years ago. So it's way more expensive now, I'm sure. Anyway, I didn't have that kind of money, and they were calling for their money. They, because I signed something saying I would pay them. I didn't know how I was going to pay them. So I was watching The Secret, and they talked about like seeing your bills as already paid and imagining it and such. And what I did was, because I'm a graphic designer, like my background is in design, I took the bill, scanned it into my computer, and used Photoshop. I hate hearing people talk about Photoshop now, because I actually took classes and all that stuff to learn Photoshop. So I hate it when people are just like, that was Photoshopped, like they know what it is. But anyway, that's just my personal pet peeve. Anywho, so I Photoshopped this document for my own purposes, and changed all the balances to zero on the bill. I actually did it on more than one bill, related to the same issue. So like one was for the ambulance and one was for actually seeing the doctor and the MRI and all that stuff. So so I put the balances to zero, and then I put the two bills on my wall, and then I would just go maybe once a day or something and just stand there staring at the bill, like feeling grateful that it was paid. Didn't know how it was going to work out or anything like that. And I let myself not need to know. And I just focused on it being a zero balance. And then I had an inspired thought to reach out to the company and see what I could do about having them waive the bill. So I reached out to them and kind of like waited for their decision. And they eventually, I think they sent me a letter that said that they were waiving it and that I didn't have to pay the ambulance fee. So they waived it for the full amount. So it was $0. Then the bill to the hospital, including that MRI bill, which was thousands and thousands of dollars, along with the visit, I was just like, this one's bigger. Like, I'm happy the ambulance thing worked out, but this one's bigger. And I was still kind of freaking out, but I allowed myself to still believe that it was going to work out somehow. And I just kept, well, if this one got down to zero, maybe this one will get down to some, next to nothing as well. So I was moved to call the office to find out what I could do in order to get the bill reduced or eliminated. And they sent me a form to fill out, and I fill out the form, get that back to them, and then I just wait and wait and wait. And I'm just like, because at first they were like, well, we're not going to be able to we're not going to take it down to zero. We can't just waive it. You're going to have to pay something, but we'll let you know how much we're expecting you to pay. And then one day my phone rings, and it's the office that like deals with those things at the hospital, and they were just like, so I guess it was like the woman was calling on behalf of her supervisor or manager, and she was like, he told me to call you directly because we never do this, and we're just letting you know that your entire bill was waived, so your balance is now zero. The church in me wants to like shout hallelujah, and do a little shout dance, maybe run around my room right now, but because I legit got chills just like remembering the moment, because I don't think about it all the time, but I have experienced this stuff, and I know that imagination works, and I have to remind myself of and maybe that's an exercise for me, and maybe that's our exercise for the day, is maybe to take that time to sit and think, have you ever experienced any kind of money coming in a way that you haven't, that you can't imagine, or you couldn't imagine, or what would seem like a miracle? And to recognize, or if you've ever imagined something and then had it happen as you imagined it, like whether it was when you were 6 years old that you wanted a certain kind of toy or a certain kind of bike, and you like kept picturing having it, and then you got it one Christmas, or or you were able to get it for yourself later because you got some money, that type of thing. Like, to just so let's do that. Let's recognize the times in our lives when good things happened. The thing that we wanted did show up, or the thing that we wanted really did happen. Because as much as it's very easy for me to make a list of all the stuff that's gone wrong in my life, I've definitely had those moments that I don't think about often enough, where only a miracle, where it really was like a miraculous moment for these things to happen. And I'm going to tell you one more. So yesterday I was driving my car, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't, because I was just like, I felt trapped in a parking lot because there were so many speed bumps that in order to get from one place to get where I needed to go, I had to go over speed bumps, or cut across all the parking spaces. And then there are certain areas where I couldn't cut across the parking spaces because they're like islands where they've planted bushes and things like that. So I was kind of freaking out. Like, I can't take this anymore. The next time I hit a speed bump, it might fall off this time. And it was just too much for me. And as I sat there just kind of freaking out, like, I deserve better than this. I should not be driving around with a car that is just not safe. And in that moment, I had an inspired thought, and it doesn't feel like an inspired thought because it seems like a practical thing, but it was the last thing on earth that I would have wanted to do because I don't like asking for help. Let me just say that. I don't like asking for help. I'm not used to it being okay. So anyway, so I'm sitting there, and then the thought was, just call your dad and tell him what's going on. And ask him if he'll take care of it. And of course, like, I don't want to do that. I'm a grown woman. And regardless of all the stuff that's going on with me financially, like, I still do not want to be like, Daddy, can you pay for my thing? Like, it feels infantile and completely irresponsible and all that stuff. But in that moment, it felt like exactly what the F I needed to do, because I was not. It was like, all pride aside, I'm not going to drive around feeling terrified anymore. So I called him, and he was just like, okay, go ahead. So all of the angst and all that stuff for a response of, all right, go ahead. Like, I'll pay for it. Like, go ahead. Basically use my card and I'll pay for it. Go to the shop. So I called the shop right after talking to him, and the guy said he would be there at 7. So I pulled up at 7:30, and I am very happy to report that my car sounds like a car again and not a motorcycle. I can drive freely. I had to go over a couple speed bumps today, and there were no issues. And there's no rattling when I put the car in gear. It was bliss. It was bliss. And, and it really just came from, like I was talking about yesterday, seeing things differently, seeing ourselves as deserving, seeing ourselves as it's possible. Like, I stopped seeing myself as this, like, burdensome creature who has absolutely no right to ask for help. And I shifted to, I see myself as better than this. I have an option for getting this taken care of. I'm going to put my ego and all that stuff to the side and just say, can you please help me? I am in desperate need. That's what I did. And now I'm driving a car that sounds like a car. Nothing's hanging. Everything is has been repaired. And actually, while the mechanic was under there, he noticed that my floor, that's been hanging out underneath the bottom of my car for all of the pandemic, so a few years now, that the floor on the passenger side of my car has been hanging hanging through an open hole in the he fixed it for me. He was like, hey, while I was under here, I saw that this was hanging, so I went ahead and I just fixed that up for you. And I was just like, thank you so much. And of course, he didn't charge me. He was just being nice. And so sometimes you get more than you ask for. But so I encourage you to let's imagine, let's remember things that we've imagined in the past. Or even stories that we've heard of other people, if they feel good for us, like if it causes you to start feeling jealous, like, why doesn't that shit ever happen to me? Then maybe not. But if it's a story where you're just like, we saw that person living a healthy, happy life despite what illness they were going through, and now they really are living a happy, healthy life. Whatever the detail is, just to start to remember, even if you only come up with one thing, to recognize that it's possible, that what we imagine can actually come true, and that it can happen for us too. If it can happen for anybody, it can happen for us too. So, this is Marlene Dillon, Empowerment Specialist. Thank you for imagining with me. Have an amazing whatever time of day it is for you. Blessings. To learn more about me, Marlene Dillon, Empowerment Specialist, please visit mdillondesigns.com. There you can find more podcast episodes. You can read my inspirational blog. You can check out my online store of personalized gifts featuring the characters from my empowering children's book, I'm Proud to Be Natural Me. You can find parenting resources, including my online communication course, Healing Our Families, Healing the Parent-Child Relationship. Please follow and share if you found this podcast inspiring. Thank you.